Today, I'm gonna break down Future's Ocean from Mixtape Pluto. Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. Today we're gonna break down Future's Ocean from Mixtape Pluto. The producers listed were Wheezy, Honorable C Note, Des Wright, Jack Uriah, and Moulin. So shout out to those guys. My favorite part is the intros. Here's what it sounds like. The first sound I liked was the arpeggio sound, and I built this in Serum. I was trying to figure out if it was a sine wave or a triangle wave, so I just used the simple sine wave with a little unison just for chorusing. Now, one thing I am doing, which is a little unorthodox, is I'm going into the mixer, adding Serum effects, and then I'm running the sound under the noise oscillator as an audio input. Click this button, note latch, and I'm using the filter and modulating the filter with an LFO. So basically a low pass filter kind of opens and closes. So it shaves off some of the notes, and I'm using the kilohertz reverser to create this like mirror melody. So I was like, did it? And then it'll go like, why? It like reverses. And then I have fruity delay as well, adding some extra notes in there just with ping pong mode on, a little tiny bit of it. And that's running into the reverser. So the reverser goes like, it like pulls back the audio. I'll exaggerate it so you guys can hear. So just little stuff like that and just pulling that down a little bit. I think it's called like, I think they use seagulls because like the arpeggio looks like a seagull. That's just my theory. And then nextly we have this seagull Foley. And I'm just cross-fading them to repeat it. Okay, so that adds a lot of filler noise for the intro. And then we have this next sound here, which is the bass. Now this took me a while to kind of figure out what was going on with the bass. So in the bass, what I've done is clicked under the warp section. I'm going to bend and turn the bend up so that we have a little more boom out of our sawtooth. And I'm down 2 octaves here with another sub octave with a sine wave. I added some noise, and all these sounds basically have a quick decay. So it goes like that. And I'm using this cutoff filter with resonance to really boost up a certain frequency. A lot of drive. I think I even added under the effects tab a multi-band compressor to really pull out those mid tones, and I shaved off the high tones. Actually, I'm pulling out the mid. And then we're shaving off the high frequencies because without these, here's what it sounds like. It sounds a little dull. Okay, now the main thing though is under the global tab, I went to where it says width. This is for the multi-voice detuning. I pulled this to 0 so that it's a mono unison instead of the thing being like super wide like this. Okay, so I pulled it in mono. And that adds to some like wave cancellations that you get with the sound. Okay, and then I think that's all I did with that one. I just turned it down a little bit. You guys can get the project files for free. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/FL Studio. Nextly, we have a tubular bell. So that's just kind of like layered in there. It's just really in the tuck. Then nextly, we have this vocal. Now, I'm pretty sure they use Omnisphere. Most of you guys don't have Omnisphere, so I was like, okay, let me find something. So we used Expand 2, and the preset's called Female E Choir, but you guys could use the ahs and oohs as well. There's no like right or wrong one. It's just, I can tell they probably use Omnisphere just by the sound design on it. So we just followed the notes, not really complicated. The only difference here is that I ran the vocal through a Vocodex, which adds this like artifact to the sound. Like a tin sound. It adds like, it adds this sound to it. It's like this. And that little tiny detail kind of makes that sound the sound. Now I'll turn off the EQ. Hear that like type sound. It just, so I EQ'd a lot of it out just so it fit in the mix, but that is where you get that sound from. This sound, I'm pretty sure they designed this in some kind of synth. So I have Serum and I was going for an organ at first, but then I realized the sound I was hearing was like two different sounds stacked up. So this one, I think I went to the user tab and I found a wavetable for an organ. You guys are gonna have to Google this one because I don't know the exact pack I got it from. But I did download that. I don't think that comes with Serum. And then we have sub oscillator 2 octaves higher with a sawtooth. And then I added a sawtooth here. Thing that was so subtle is that the panning goes left and right at a certain point. So I don't know if it's in the middle of the song or in the beginning, but anyhow, I added an LFO to the pan so it goes left and right. So it's very subtle, but it's moving around. Now the little thing here is we have mono legato on so we could add pitch slur, like that overlapping notes. I added reverb just so it wasn't like super static sounding. And let's see what else I added on here. I think that was it. I tried OTT, but that was too aggressive. But you guys could add that for more brightness if you want it. I didn't think we needed it for this track. And then I added the kilohertz reverser to add more of that like reverse tail sound. Let me crank it up so you guys can hear the effect. Kind of like that weird back and forth sound. Okay, so I just blended that in. Now they could have been using audio for all I know and reversing the audio. I was just going by my sound design approach. And then here we have this interesting arpeggio. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Now some notes, they don't play the 5 notes, they just play the 4. Okay, so that kind of repeats. It's a cool sound because it makes you realize like automation can make people pay attention to stuff and other stuff not so much. So again, more of like that seagull shape where it's like down, up, down. So interesting melodic stuff. My favorite part was the arpeggios in this. Now this next sound is like a sound you don't realize is in the mix, but it's like this super bright sound. It's just like a sawtooth and it's bright. And I thought at first that it was part of the other synth, but it's a separate sound. So it's just like a bright sound that just hits. Technically, I could brighten this sound up a little bit more. But I added hypercourse just so it wasn't super sharp on the ear. That's like what I've done to edit the sound. And for the vocal, because the vocal is not the exact preset they probably use, I had to automate the volume of the singer just so it sounded like it had a decay. So this is not mandatory. It's just dependent on the preset you guys have. Now here's what was cool because they kept the idea going. So I like what they did with that bass. Now, one thing to note here is that they use these like pitch wobbles. Now on a real synth, you would just use the pitch wheel, but because we're programming, we have to draw it in. It's a little convoluted, but long story short, you have to have mono legato on for your voicing. And what you can do in FL, because it's not the same thing as like an image line plugin, you have to draw notes to trigger a pitch bend. So I'm drawing these little notes, almost like drums. So it goes like really quickly. But in real life, you would just move a pitch wheel, but we have to program it in. So it's not like this long note that's a static. They move the note to keep the ear engaged. So I thought that was interesting. Now here, again, it depends on the preset, but I'm using the expand. So the biggest sound here is the vocal and the bell. So this gray note, I noticed the bell, it seemed like they added a bell an octave lower to really fill it out. So the bell is playing a subtly different thing than the vocal. So right here, the bell, I'm playing it like 2 octaves of the bell. And And that really fills out that sound for that specific part of the song. And the 808s, let's go into the 808s. So the 808s, we're at 137.770 tempo. Okay, so it's a really strange tempo. It's not like your normal tempo. Even with this tempo, it's not exact. For all we know, it could be like 137.777. Who knows? So I'm turning on the metronome so you guys can actually hear the count. 3, C. Okay, so it's downbeat. 3, C, yo is the rhythm, but we're not playing the O on the tresillo. So it's 3, C, yo, but we're not playing the O. 1, 3, C, yo, 1. Gap. Okay, no 808 here. Pause. 3, C, yo, boom. Okay, so it's all about tresillo when it comes to hip hop for the most part. And then what they did to kind of spice it up was add this lower note at a lower velocity. So it goes dun, 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 like that. So it steps up. I thought that was an interesting bounce idea. So it just adds that like pull back effect for the 808. Now on pattern 20 here, let's see what we got. Now here is, you guys need FL24, just update. Basically, if you go to the control in the bottom left, if you don't see this, grab the ellipses here, pull that up, go to the bottom left, go to note repeat. And for this specific note, I turn this up so it has like a triplet hit. So it goes like that. Okay, so that's how you can create quick little 808 rolls and hi-hat rolls as well. So the hi-hats, I want to point out the hi-hats. The hi-hats are pretty simple. What I love about it is that it gives the artist room to like do stuff. One cool thing that they did was add and then it went towards the end, and it really accented the 808 timing. So listen for this little 3 hi-hat thing in a row. And then listen to the 808 stuff happen afterwards. Where's the one pattern here? So that is the cool part about the 808 in my opinion. Forget what this is on track 23. I think it's just a vocal. Oh, it's a guitar wah. So it sounded like they added like an E piano or a synth. I didn't want to waste time like adding such a minute detail, so I just added a wah guitar. Okay, just for a little accent for the turnaround. Sounds like a real guitar they're using though. One thing I forgot to mention is on pattern 7 here, we have the bass, but it's just filtered out. So it's super tucked. Another thing this taught me is how like sounds can get tucked, but they're there. Like, so I added a high pass filter to this bass just to, cut out the low end so the 808 wouldn't fight with it. So it's just like the sound, the tone of the high end of the bass blended in with the beat. So that's what's, it's not as noticeable, but that's definitely filling out a lot of the sound there. Okay, let's play this from the beginning. So I want to thank you guys for watching. To get these project files for free, just go to busyworksbeats.com/FL Studio. If you want to learn how to make beats like the pros, go to busyworksbeats.com/premium. I want to thank you guys for watching. It's Game from busyworksbeats.com. Peace out, guys.